Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 6 college football predictions. So last week, I had a record of 16-3, and that brings my record on the season to 84-15. Kicking things off this week with a couple of games we have on Friday, beginning with Oregon hosting Michigan State. So Michigan State is in the middle of a really tough stretch where they play a team currently ranked in the top 25 for their next 5 games. But Michigan State plays Oregon this week, and Oregon is coming off an easy win over UCLA, and I think this should be a pretty similar game for Oregon. As Michigan State isn't that great, their defense is pretty solid, allowing 19 points a game, but their offense is bad, scoring just 21.8 points a game. And then you have Oregon, they're scoring 36 points a game, and allowing 18.8 points a game. Oregon should win this game fairly easily, and I've got them winning 41-10. Next game, we got UNLV hosting Syracuse. So it's been a weird couple weeks for UNLV, as last week starting quarterback Matthew Sluka decided to redshirt the rest of the season and then transfer. But in last week's game, backup quarterback Malik Williams, who's now the starter, had 4 total touchdowns for UNLV as they destroyed Fresno State 59-14. UNLV now faces a Syracuse team that's pretty good, as they're 3-1, and they've been great offensively, specifically through the air. As quarterback Kyle McCord has been great at Syracuse, and they're throwing for 372 yards per game. But then I'll face a UNLV defense that's pretty solid, allowing 13.8 points per game. Then the offense for UNLV, they're great and haven't been affected negatively by the quarterback switch, as they're averaging 45.3 points a game, but they face a Syracuse defense allowing 22.5 points a game. This is a game that can definitely go either way. The offenses are the strengths of both teams, and I think that's going to lead this to be a high-scoring, entertaining back-and-forth game. I think UNLV has the slightly better offense. Their defense is a little better as well. And I think new quarterback Malik Williams can make a difference with what he can do as a runner as well. And I've got UNLV winning this one in what ends up being a really good game, 38-34. And moving to the rest of the games, all on Saturday, beginning with UCLA at Penn State. So UCLA is in the middle of a tough 3-game stretch against LSU, Oregon, and now Penn State. And UCLA really isn't that good. Offensively, they're really bad, scoring just 14.8 points a game, and they face a good Penn State defense that's allowing just 11.5 points a game. Then defensively for UCLA, it's still pretty one-sided, but it's interesting. Because UCLA is allowing 30.8 points a game, and they face a Penn State offense that's scoring 36.3 points a game. Now, Penn State relies heavily on the run, rushing for 251 yards per game, but the UCLA defense is actually pretty good against the run, allowing just 107 rushing yards per game and 3.5 yards per carry. Now, the Penn State run game is good enough to find success even against a defense that's good against the run, but in the case that Penn State can't run the football effectively, then that puts some pressure on quarterback Drew Auer, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but I do think Penn State will be able to get the win. I think Auer will play well enough if he needs to, but I think they'll be able to run the football effectively, and Penn State's defense will dominate. Penn State wins this game pretty easily, 34-6. Up next, we got Texas A&M hosting Missouri. So Texas A&M has been playing with second-string quarterback Marcel Reed for the past 3 games, and he's been decent. Now, Missouri, they are playing to play against Marcel Reed this week, although there is a chance Texas A&M starting quarterback Connor Wegman returns, as he's listed as a game-time decision, and he's dealing with a shoulder injury. But Missouri, they're coming off a bye, and their most recent game was an overtime victory over Vanderbilt. Now, I think this game will be a lower scoring game, as both teams are pretty good defensively. Missouri is allowing 12 points a game, Texas A&M allowing 18 a game. But the difference for these teams is offensively, as Missouri, they're scoring 37 points a game, whereas Texas A&M scoring 29 points a game. Now, I do think the Aggies' offense will be better if they have Connor Wegman, but with his uncertainty, I'm going to take Missouri to get the win. I could see this being an upset, especially if it was at night, because going to Kyle Field is never easy, but I've got Missouri getting the win in a close one, 27-21. Moving on, we have SMU at Louisville. So Louisville, they're looking for a bounce-back win after they lost to Notre Dame last week, and SMU, they're 4-1, coming off a dominant win over Florida State, and their only loss is to an undefeated BYU team. But I think both teams are pretty good, and this should be a close game. Offensively, SMU is scoring 42.2 points per game, and Louisville is scoring 41.5 points a game. Defensively, they're also fairly similar, as Louisville is allowing 16 points a game, and SMU allowing 21 points a game. Now, while both teams are pretty good defensively, I do think this will be a offensive game and a high-scoring game. Louisville's offense turned the ball over 3 times last week, and that was a big reason they lost. And if they turn it over at a high rate again this week, then I really don't think they're going to be able to get the win. But if they can protect the football, I think they'll be able to get the win. I do really like this SMU team, and I think they're an underrated team. But I do have Louisville winning a close game. They're home as well, and I've got Louisville 37-31. Up next, we have Iowa at Ohio State. So this one's interesting. Iowa's a team that we know for their defense, but this season their defense hasn't been as dominant as they have been in previous seasons, and their offense is actually surprisingly scoring over 30 points a game. Now, while the Iowa offense is good for their standards, they're facing a great Ohio State defense, allowing only 6.8 points per game. So even though Iowa's offense is decent, I still don't think they'll be able to get much going. Then on the other side, Ohio State is scoring 48.8 points per game, and Iowa is allowing 13.8 points per game. But even though Iowa's a little better offensively, I still don't think they'll find much offensive success. Their defense will have a tough time containing the Buckeyes' offense, and I'm going to take Ohio State to win this game pretty easily, 37-10. Up next, we have Georgia hosting Auburn. So Georgia is coming off a loss to Alabama last week, where they had their 42-game regular season win streak snapped. Georgia now faces an Auburn team that isn't that good, as they're 2-3, and they blew a lead in their loss to Oklahoma last week. Now, they're scoring 32.8 points per game and allowing 14.8 points a game. And then Auburn is scoring 33.4 points a game and allowing 18.8 points a game. Now, while Auburn's numbers on the year aren't terrible, and Georgia's aren't anything too impressive, Georgia is the much better team here. It's really not that close. Georgia, they're going to have a big bounce back game. I think they're going to come out, make a statement, and I don't think this game's close. Georgia wins 41-10. Moving on, we have South Carolina hosting Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is coming off an upset loss to Kentucky, but the thing that makes this game really interesting is South Carolina demolished Kentucky. So that should mean they can beat Ole Miss, but you never know what can happen. Ole Miss needs their offense to play better after they scored just 17 points a game last week, and they need to get back to scoring their season average of roughly 50 points a game. But I think they will be able to get back to playing well offensively, as South Carolina defense isn't anything too good. And then defensively for Ole Miss, they're great. They're allowing 8.4 points a game and face a South Carolina offense that's pretty solid, scoring 34.4 points a game. And there's a chance South Carolina can get the upset win. They're home, but I don't think Ole Miss loses this. As long as they can score, which I think they will be able to. I think last week's game offensively for them was a fluke, and I think they'll get back to being a great offense, which we've seen. Ole Miss will avoid another loss, and they really need to avoid losses if they want to stay in contention for the SEC and the college football playoff. But Ole Miss, they get a good bounce-back win and win this one 42-16. Moving on, we have Northwestern hosting Indiana. So Indiana has been a team that is quietly good so far, as they're 5-0, although they haven't really played anyone good. But that continues for Indiana, as Northwestern isn't great. They're just 2-2, and in their most recent loss, they lost 24-5 against Washington. But Indiana's offense is great. They're scoring 48.8 points per game, and they face the Northwestern defense that's okay, allowing 15.8 points a game. But on the other side, Northwestern's offense is awful. They're scoring just 17 points a game, and they face an Indiana defense allowing just 13 a game. Now, Indiana is the better team here by a lot. Northwestern's only chance is to keep this game low scoring. I don't think they're going to be able to keep Indiana offense scoring almost 50 points a game to a low point total. Indiana remains undefeated, becomes one of the first teams to reach 6 wins and become bowl eligible, and Indiana wins 38-13. Moving on, we have Alabama at Vanderbilt. So Alabama is coming off a huge win over Georgia, and they need to avoid a letdown game. Now, this very well could be a letdown game, as Vanderbilt is 2-2, but they're actually a solid team, as they're a couple of close games away from really being 4-0, and in their most recent game, they took Missouri to overtime. Well, I like Vanderbilt. They're my College Football 25 Dynasty team on my gaming channel. I'll link that in the description. But we are talking about Alabama against Vanderbilt here. This shouldn't be close, at least on paper. Obviously, the games aren't played on paper. But even if Alabama has a slow start, I think Jalen Milroe and the Alabama offense will be way too much for Vanderbilt to handle, and Alabama wins 37-16. Moving on, we have Clemson at Florida State. So Florida State is terrible. They had really high preseason expectations, but they're just 1-4. Former Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei is actually out for this game due to a hand injury, but that might be a good thing for Florida State, because DJ has been awful. Florida State is now starting Brock Glenn at quarterback, and maybe he can help the offense, which is scoring just 15.2 points a game. Then for Clemson, they've been really good since their season opening loss to Georgia, as quarterback Cade Klubnik has 16 touchdowns in 4 games, and the offense is great, scoring 42 points per game. Now, defensively, Clemson isn't great, allowing 25.8 points per game, but I'm really not that concerned about the Clemson defense considering how bad the Florida State offense is. Clemson is going to dominate this game and win 42-10. Moving on, we have Boise State hosting Utah State. Boise State has looked like one of the best group of 5 teams to start the season, as they're 3-1 and looking like a real threat to make the college football playoff. Boise State has a great offense and is scoring 47 points a game, and running back Ashton Jeanty is looking like an early Heisman contender, as in 4 games he ran for 845 yards and 13 touchdowns. But Boise State now faces a Utah State team that is not very good. They're 1-3, and their one win came against an FCS team. Utah State is also a team with a bad defense, allowing over 35 points per game, and they struggle to stop the run, allowing 196 rushing yards a game. But Boise State is going to dominate this game. Ashton Jeanty is going to have another monster game built on his Heisman campaign, and Boise State will win this game very easily by a score of 52-17. Next game, we have Tennessee at Arkansas. So Tennessee is coming off a bye, but in their most recent game, they beat Oklahoma. And Arkansas, they're 3-2, coming off a loss to Texas A&M. Tennessee is the much better team here. Offensively, they're leading the country with 54 points per game, and Arkansas is scoring 35.8 points a game. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Tennessee is one of the best teams in the country, allowing just 7 points per game, which is second best in the country. And Arkansas is allowing 20 points a game. Now, while I don't think Arkansas is terrible, Tennessee is the much better team here. They're one of the best teams in the country, and they're going to win this game easily at 49-10. Moving on, we have Michigan at Washington. So this is a rematch of the national championship game from a season ago, but neither team is anywhere near as good as they were from last year. Michigan is 4-1 but overrated. Washington is 3-2, but this is going to be a lower scoring game, as both teams are strong defensively and not that great offensively. Michigan is allowing 21.4 points per game, and Washington is allowing 12.4 points per game, whereas offensively, Michigan is scoring 24.8 points per game, and Washington is scoring 25.2 points a game. But the thing that makes this game really interesting is Michigan's inability to throw the football, as Michigan has the 5th worst passing offense in the country, throwing for just 115 yards per game. And Michigan, they've relied heavily on the run game, rushing for 194 yards per game, but the Washington defense is actually pretty solid against the run, allowing 121 rushing yards per game and 3.7 yards per carry. So if Michigan can't run the football, then I really don't like their chances because their passing game is complete garbage. But this is a game that can definitely go either way. Washington is home and can definitely pull off the upset win. I'm going to pick Washington. I don't love the pick, but I got Washington in a low-scoring upset win, 20-16. Next game, we have Minnesota hosting USC. So this is another interesting game. Minnesota, they're only 2-3, but they're actually a pretty solid team. And they're a classic old-school Big Ten team, not a great offense, good defense. Now, both teams actually lost to Michigan on the road by just 3 points. And I think this game will be pretty close. USC, they're the opposite of Minnesota. They have a great offense, and their defense isn't anything too special. But Minnesota, they have a great pass defense, allowing just 96.8 passing yards per game. And USC has a pass-first offense, which averages 316 passing yards a game, which ranks 12th in the country. So that is a matchup that could very well decide this game. And there's potential for an upset here, but I'm going to take USC to get the win. Even if they don't have the most success throwing the football, I still think they'll be able to do it well enough. And they're just a better team here, and I think USC wins this game 30-21. Moving on, we have Iowa State hosting Baylor. So this is another game that could be tricky. Iowa State, they're a good team, but they rely heavily on their defense, as they're 4-0 and have only scored more than 21 points once this season. Baylor is a team that they just took another undefeated Big 12 team in BYU down to the wire. Now, neither team is too good offensively, as Iowa State is scoring 28.3 points a game, Baylor is scoring 29.4 points a game. But defensively, both teams are great. Iowa State has the 4th best scoring defense in the country, allowing 7.8 points per game, and Baylor is allowing 20 points a game. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring, close games, and in those types of games, it is very possible an upset happens. But I'm going to stick with the better defense. Iowa State, they have the much better defense here. I think their offense is slightly better as well, although they haven't played like it yet this season. But Iowa State, they get the win in a low-scoring game, 19-13. And our final game, we have Miami at Cal. So how about this for an ACC matchup, or an Atlantic Coast Conference game? We have Miami against Cal. But Miami, they're an undefeated team, coming off a close win against Virginia Tech, and Cal is 3-1. Now, Miami, they have one of the best offenses in the country, scoring 49.4 points per game, and they face a great Cal defense, allowing just 12.8 points a game. Now, Cal's offense isn't anything too impressive, scoring just 23 points a game, and the Miami defense is pretty good, allowing 15 points a game. But Cal, they're not going to be able to keep up with Miami. Even if their defense is pretty good and plays well, they won't be able to hold Miami to a low enough point total. The offense won't be able to keep up, and Miami wins this game 42-15. But those are my Week 6 college football predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications so you don't miss any of their upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible. Be sure to check out the community tab of my channel, where you guys can vote on who you think will win some of this week's big games. But thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.